It's 11 days to the presidential elections. Well, the narrative for the 2015 elections gets more intense. Politicians continue the political chess while the electorate observe with intent. Well, the key to their participation in the exercise is actually the permanent voter card. Good evening. Welcome to Nigeria 2015. I'm Chamberlain Oso. Well, feisty discussions continue unabated in different quarters about where the people will pitch their tents. Well, for the electorate to have an edge, they'll need to have the permanent voter card. But you know, in spite of the challenges, they remain resolute on collecting their PVCs. What is being done about it? Well, we'll hear from our correspondent who will bring us up to the minute about what is going on in their location. Do they have the same complaints? Well, Lionel Asisi joins us from Abuja. Okay, well, I will join us from Abuja, not to worry about that. But our web team will again provide several platforms for you to participate and get your voice heard on the program. Well, don't forget you can tweet at us using the hashtag Nigeria 2015. Well, please use a handle you see on your screen. It could be at Channels TV or at my handle. Well, there you can tell us, in the light of all that's going on, permanent voter card or not. So you can hashtag PVC collected or PVC not collected in these elections. But don't forget to use that hashtag. Well, if you have comments or questions, you can send us an email at nigeria2015@channelstv.com. Well, it's 3 minutes at the time, and the clock on your screen is counting down to that time. And so we'll get to just keep up to the minute concerning that time, which you see counting down to the big elections, the February general elections. Well, joining us tonight, Mr. Tunji Lardner, Executive Director of Wangonet. Well, Ezewan Wango is the Executive Director Operations for Nigeria Project, who will be joining us from our studios in Abuja. And on Skype, Kaide Ido is the Chief Press Secretary to the Chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC. Well, the conversation over the collection of the permanent voter card continues across the country. Well, let's give you a little bit of background about what has been over time. Don't forget, it's not just today that the collection of the permanent voter card actually started. There's been some background info which will pop out here. Now, let's take a look at some of these, guys. Now, the total number of registered voters for this election, as we've been told by the Commission, is this figure. 68.8 million people registered this year. Well, don't forget, INEC did say they cleaned register from last election and then give us 68.8 million. But then, this figure here now, 42.77 million people, are actually the amount of permanent voter cards that have been distributed for those who have been able to go ahead and collect their permanent voter cards. And so thereafter, we also do have, well, yes, now this figure happens to be the outstanding figure, which is the one of controversy. But we'll come to that in a minute as we go on with some of these facts and figures about the collection of the permanent voter card. Now, those that have been distributed actually gives us this. 62.15%. It means that, yes, that's the, if you put it in percentages, the amount of permanent voter cards that have been distributed, in spite of all that is being said about who has collected what, where, when did they collect that. But then we went ahead and we're going to bring this zone analysis of the regions in terms of the distribution of the permanent voter card. North Central states, or states in the North Central region there, Benue, Kwara, Nasarawa, Kogi, Plateau, and Niger. Just over 5 million permanent voter cards, actually precisely 5,859,562 permanent voter cards collected in that region. And then we move on to the northeast. In the northeast of Yobe, Adamawa, Bauchi, Taraba, Gombe, Borno. Yes, I know security pops up here about the question of IDPs and all of those, but That notwithstanding, we've got 6,678,148 PVCs collected in that region. But whether or not election will hold and how the IDPs will vote in some of those states also remains a key question. But don't forget Northwest. Now, the Northwest has got this huge figure, massive figures. You have Kebbi, Zamfara, Jigawa, Sokoto, Kano, Katsina, Kaduna. Now, all of these states have got, look at that, 12,784,880 permanent voter cards collected. This figure is actually from the Independent National Electoral Commission. Let's not forget to add that to you. And then we'll come down to the South-South. In the South-South of Bayelsa, Rivers, Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Edo, and Delta, those states put together 6,214,977 permanent voter cards collected. Again, according to figures released by the Commission. And then in the southeast of Abia, Anambra, Enugu, Imo, and Ebonyi, you've got 6,403,530 permanent voter cards being distributed in this region. Don't forget the Southwest. In the Southwest, Lagos, Osun, Ekiti, Ondo, Ogun, and Oyo State, well, their figure here is 6,403,530 permanent voter cards collected in this region. And those are the people who, at the moment, can go on and slot in the PVC with the card readers and then get counted. So, but you know, it's not without incident. Yes, this thing you see here, this slide about the stolen permanent voter card, surprising as it may be to some people, but yes, 3,661 stolen permanent voter cards in some areas, while 983 recovered in Edo State. Yes, this figure is about Edo State, but River State records the highest according to the Commission, 14,000 permanent voter cards stolen. That's the highest in the country. None has been recovered, as you can see here. So I guess the police are still combing several areas. Perhaps if there's any update, we will find out. We hope that they will give us that breakdown as well. But you know, all of this costs money. How much money? Look at this. In this year alone, well, INEC did budget 120 billion. Yes, but 45, we understand, was released to the Commission. They still going back and forth about 75 billion, but we hope that they will update us if anything has changed about that one. Yes, that amount of money which they requested. So will that change anything? Who knows? But let's take you back in time a little bit, just about less than a year. In 2014, they did estimate about 993 billion actually, which they said they required to prepare for the 2015 elections, which is going to happen this year. But all of that argument went on. It went back and forth. But in 2013, as a matter of fact, INEC, we understand, received 32 billion. And then a little further down, it was 35 billion, which they got in 2012, just to ensure that things go on smoothly about the preparations for the election so that there'll be no excuse. But in 2011, remember that big year, funds, they said they lacked funds, and then 85 billion. So all of those success stories, funds backed a lot of those preparations. But there you go. Whether or not that has made any difference over time, we'll get to find out about all of those scenarios. So we've seen the amount of money that they budgeted over time, how much has been released to the Commission over time as well, and what they've been able to achieve. Perhaps you could see if you could match that with the funds and see if it makes any sense about any of those things now. Well, all of this being said about the collection of the permanent voter card, about whether or not or what day should be a deadline, don't forget there's a week extra. But before that time, the chairman of the Commission, Satario Jaga, did also speak about the timeline, the deadline. Let's hear what he thought about the collection of the permanent voter cards.
If you recall, some people did continuous voter registration up to the middle of December. And we have not yet produced those cards. There are still some that have not been produced, but we are doing everything possible to ensure that before the end of this month, all the cards have been produced and made available for people to collect. We are still advertising and telling people to come out and collect before the 31st of January. But if push comes to shove, we can distribute up to the eve of the election. If it becomes necessary in polling units where it's not being collected, we can distribute up to the 13th of February, but we will cross the bridge when we get to it. So what I'm saying is that we can keep on improving the distribution mechanisms to make it easier to collect. But there is still the big issue, which is that if those cards are available and people do not come to collect these cards, INEC cannot be blamed for that. Will election hold on February 14th? I spoke earlier, I have said so. I have said everything we are doing, including the challenge of the distribution of permanent voters' cards, we believe is something we can address long before February 14th. So I don't know what else anybody wants me to say. We issued a timetable for election on February 14th almost a year ago. And we've been very busy working to implement that timetable to the letter.
Well, the chairman of the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, Professor Atari Ujaga, well, actually, the thing is, there will be a lot more people who will want him to say much more than he has said now, even though he said, look, what else do they want him to say? But now let's take a look at one more slide for you today. Well, remember, we did bring you all of that breakdown about funds allocated to the commission, how many permanent voter cards have been collected. But in 1 week, remember that there's been an extension of the collection date now. Now, the big question, if you look at that figure, 26 million, well, that was the last figure, even though they say between 20 and 26 million permanent voter cards now, which is left. So the big actually distribute about 26 million permanent voter cards in 1 week. We will find out, and don't forget to keep today on the program. I'm going to move over to Mr.